Hey, Mr. Davis. Ash, why are you doing this? I'm David Menzies, Rebel News.
Hi. No, you're not really a part of this. We're having a team chat now.
Okay, I'm just trying to ask some questions, ma'am.
But this is not the appropriate time for that.
Why are you allowing a biological male to compete against female players?
I'm not going to have a conversation with you.
Well, I'll talk to Ash then. Ash, do you take joy in injuring female rugby players? Are you lacking the skills to play with male players where you should be? You're a biological male, aren't you? Hey folks, perhaps you've caught our coverage of what's become known as the Fergus Fiasco. I speak of Ash Davis. He's a biological male who plays on the female squad of the Fergus Highlanders Rugby Club. This is in total contravention to World Rugby rules, which forbids biological male players competing against female players, primarily for safety reasons. But the Fergus Highlander lassies, well, they're A-okay with having a bioweapon on their squad. In fact, when we did our original report, they became downright hysterical when we were asking questions about Ash. They were chanting human rights or trans rights or something. Here, check it out.
All lives matter! Human rights matter!
You don't have a problem.
You can leave now.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
This is a human rights issue!
Oh, okay, then.
We live in Canada! All rights, human rights for everybody! Trans matter!
What about the...
Trans rights matter!
That you are traumatizing my family.
I'm traumatizing them. Why? What happened?
Because my kids get to see people like you crying because of things.
I'm surprised.
Need you in our
As a mother, why would you expose your kids to a
Because
massage?
that is my partner. That is my wife that you are being.
So he's a lesbian? Amazingly, the league is okay with this travesty. And Rugby Canada and Rugby Ontario, they're okay with it. And the players are okay. And the referees are okay. So the question arises, what about the Ontario Ministry of Sport? Surely the ministry isn't keen to see the province devolve into an international laughingstock when it comes to sportsmanship. By the way, I just checked out who the current Minister of Sport is, and that would be Neil Lumsden. For me, that's a touchdown. After all, Mr. Lumsden has the credentials to be Ontario's best ever Minister of Sport. He's a man's man, after all, an ex-professional football player who played for the Toronto Argonauts, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and the Edmonton Eskimos, winning some 4 Grey Cups in the process. In other words, he walks the walk. And as a former pro football player, surely Neil Lumsden knows the inherent risks of men playing against women in a full contact sport like rugby. Surely Mr. Lumsden is outraged that this grotesque state of affairs is happening on his watch. Lumsden understands sportsmanship and chivalry. Surely this CFL Hall of Famer isn't holding his nose and turning a blind eye to misogyny. Surely Lumsden hasn't been coerced into maintaining the multi-party line that if it's trans, it's good, and if it's good, it's trans, even though Ash Davis might just be mentally ill. So it was that I recently sent 4 questions to Minister Lumsden's office. Here they are. Number 1, why is Rugby Ontario turning a blind eye to the violation of international guidelines regarding the inclusion of Davis on a female team? Rugby Ontario will not return our inquiries and has issued a gag order for players not to talk about this issue. Number 2, the rationale for the rule prohibiting biological males from competing with biological females is for health and safety reasons. Indeed, Davis has been injuring real women on a frequent basis. What is the ministry's position on this issue? Number 3, with few exceptions, i.e. auto racing and equestrian, male and female athletes compete in separate divisions. Why is the situation different when it comes to rugby in Ontario? And 4, is your ministry doing anything to rectify the situation in Fergus? And the answer, folks, well, crickets. Really, Mr. Lumsden? It looks like when it comes to the Transanity file, now that you are a cabinet minister as opposed to a football player, it's now all a matter of et tu, Brute, isn't it? Isn't it profoundly sad, folks, what some men will do for money, like selling their soul to avoid rocking the politically correct boat? Unbelievable. But stop the clock, for it's even worse than you think. The other day, I was reading through Rugby Ontario's website, and guess what? Far from being reprimanded by the province for violating the rules of World Rugby, Rugby Ontario has actually been rewarded by the provincial government for its bad behavior last month. I swear. Check out this photo of Rugby Ontario CEO Miles Spencer. Spencer is equal parts cowardly and coercive when it comes to the Fergus trans circus. He's issued a gag order warning players not to talk about Ash Davis. And yet, here is Mr. Spencer receiving a grant for $150,000 via the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And why exactly is the renegade Rugby Ontario getting a six-figure boost via the taxpayer? Well, check out what Lorne Coe, the MPP for Whitby and the parliamentary assistant to the Premier, had to say. Quote, "Our government has embarked on many initiatives to boost sports. Funding Rugby Ontario through OTF helps community building through diversity, equity, and inclusion. A healthy sports culture reflects a healthy community," end quote. Healthy, Mr. Coe? Provincial rugby is healthy for whom these days? Healthy for franken-femme grifters injuring real biological female players? And the question arises, is this really a Conservative government residing at Queen's Park? With the likes of MPP Coe clinging to the unholy trilogy of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is the woke bailiwick of the leftist opposition parties. Then again, they don't call the Premier of Ontario Doug Fraud for nothing, I suppose. Because as our research indicates, in Ontario, if you violate the rules of World Rugby and you protect a misogynist in the name of diversity and you allow cheating to prevail, you don't end up in the penalty box. Rather, you get a juicy six-figure reward. Ho ho! Omar Cotter, eat your heart out. If you like cruising already, this is truly something unique. And if you've never been on a cruise, this is the perfect way to start with a group of like-minded folks from coast to coast. You can find out all of the details on different cabins at rebelnewscruise.com. That's rebelnewscruise.com. I know you'll look back on it as a vacation of a lifetime. All aboard! We have reserved a limited number of Rebel News cabins, so book yours today at rebelnewscruise.com.